Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another tutorial of Salesforce Makes Sense. This is Himanshu and we are continuing our Lightning Web Components masterclass. In the previous tutorial, we talked about conditional rendering, right? Where we talked about if true and if false directives, and we understood how we can use it, right? So LWC if, LWC else if, LWC else, that is what we learned, right? Now, there were two questions that I put up, which was, can you have multiple LWC if blocks, one inside the other in a single component? The answer to that is yes, it is possible. There's nothing wrong in doing it, and there's nothing fancy in doing it. It's basically a requirement wherein, let's say, you have to show something if a certain variable or a certain boolean is true, and inside that also you need to have a condition. It's a very legit use case, right? So this is very much possible, the first one. But the second one, can you have multiple independent LWC if blocks in a component? Yes, that is also true. You can have multiple if blocks because you might have more than one situation in which you want to show conditional information, right? Independent of the previous module. So both the answers are yes. All right. So for those of you who were correct, kudos to that. Next, we are going to look at iterators. All right. Iterators is pretty much the last topic before we do a practice example, more like a mini project. So yeah, stay tuned for the mini project, but yes, let's understand iterators as part of this particular tutorial. Cool. So iterators are nothing but, we actually covered this as part of our JavaScript, short and sweet masterclass. But for LWC, we need to understand that, you would have a lot of requirement around showing your records, your object records, your lists, your maps, your collections, and all that stuff on LWC, right? And how would you do that? Because you have more than one record, you would actually be using an iterator on the HTML side. All right. So that's where iterators come in handy. So iterators allow you to loop through items and display them in the UI. So you can show a card, you can show a row, you can show a list, you can show pretty much anything. You just have to put it in a loop. Right? So how do you listen to songs in a loop? Same way. You listen to one song, you listen to another song, and it continues in a loop, right? So similarly, if you have a list of items that you have to show on the screen for the end user, you are going to use iterators. Okay. Now, I'm not going to show a list of cricketers. Maybe that's a bit basic. Let's do something. Let's try to show a list of tasks. Okay. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to again create a new LWC component, and I'm going to call it iterator framework, maybe, no worries. All right, I have my HTML created. I'll first of all just get this enabled. So I'll just copy the target and I'll take it from my previous component that I built, replace it here, save, and I'll just go ahead and deploy the blank template first of all. Okay. Cool, it is deployed. Let's go to Salesforce and let's refresh our page. Oh, it has not come up here. Why? Because I've not added it. Obviously, it will not come there, right? So I'll just move this previous tutorial on the right side, and I'll just add our use case. I'll just move this here. This is done, and now we have called it iterator framework, right? It is visible. Sorry, iterator framework. We'll just drop it here. Cool. There's nothing in there. That's why it's an empty thing. So let's say save. All right, great. Save and go back. And now our component should show up. It is not showing anything, but it is still sitting there. We know. All right. Now, what do we want to do as part of understanding this is basically kind of create a task, or more like, not create a task, but see the list of tasks that a person has. Okay. So Himanshu is that person in this scenario, and he has a lot of tasks to do. Okay. So I'll just create a variable. And what kind of variable I want to create? I want to, let's say, create a array variable because I need to iterate on something. So that means I have to have an array, correct? So I'll just call it task list is equal to array. All right. Now in this particular task list, I have a lot of things that I need to do, each of which can be represented as an object, correct? So I have to do, let's say, three things. The first thing being, or let's call it, instead of name, let's call it task name. The second thing is the task priority. Because we have not understood how to take things from Salesforce database, we are still using something that's static, but yeah, just for understanding, it will help us. Okay. The first thing is the task name. The second thing is the task priority. And the third thing is the task progress, right? So that we know what has been done, what has not been done. Okay. And I would just want to keep one unique identifier, which is the task ID. All right. So let's say this is the first task. then you would have the second task, the third task, and so on, right? Let me remove this extra space and let's copy this for 2 more records. So this kind of tells you that there are 3 tasks that Himanshu has, correct? So I'll just go ahead and say task name, prepare video script, all right, and then record tutorial, and then edit and upload. All right, these are the 3 tasks. The first task priority is high, the second one is medium, the third one is low, let's say. Okay, why? Because until I do the first task, I cannot do the second or the third one, right? And task progress, all of these are, let's say this one is in progress and the other 2 are pending because they have not been started yet. All right, pending. Great. So my variable is created, which is called task list, which is an array of elements. Now what kind of elements are sitting here? It's an object. That means it is an array of objects. Object. Make sense? Cool. Great. So now that we have this task list sorted, now my ask from you is basically I want to show this task list to the end user that, what are your tasks remaining or what tasks do you have. So I cannot just blindly just, put the task list variable here. How would that show up? Let's see. Task list has just been used here and I'll just go ahead and say deploy. Let's see how this looks like. Let's refresh. So you see, it's showing you as 3 objects. It's not giving you any information. There are objects inside it. This means this is an array of objects, but what content is there? What do I need to do? There's no information here, right? So let's kind of give better information to the end user by dissecting this into the actual values that it has inside the task name, the priority and progress, and also make it a bit more aesthetic, right? So we'll start with something as simple as a lightning card, right? Let's take a lightning card so that we can see the white background and kind of just see that, have a heading and have a subtitle and all of that stuff. Yeah. So this is a card, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take let's say a basic card and I'm just going to pick this up. Okay. So far so good. I'm not going to use this variable directly and I'll say, instead of the title, I'll say my task list for today. Okay. Now label and actions. I don't need this button for now. As per my requirement, I'm going to get rid of it. Okay, and then you have a card footer and a card body. So in the card footer, I can simply say all the best, get it going. All right, and in my body is where I want to actually put my task list. So let's put my task list here. All right, looks a bit better. Let's deploy this and see how this looks like. So I've taken all the inheritant SLDS classes. So some spacing and all of it will come automatically as part of the lightning card. It is not something I am providing as a custom CSS. Okay, deploy again. Let's go here. What happened? Okay, so yeah, so you see now it looks a bit more neat. Again, similar to our previous examples, I have the task list for today header. I have a very good message saying all the best, get it going, but my task list is still not showing properly. I want to see the information, right? How do I do that? This is where iterators come into picture. This is where we'll iterate over things, right? So what are we going to do? We are going to actually remove this task list from here, and this is my paragraph tag. Inside my paragraph tag, I'm going to define a template, and this template is going to iterate over my task list. Now when you have to iterate over something, you have to say for each record in task list. That's how you iterate over something. Okay, this is how you are going to iterate over something. All right, now when you have to iterate over something, let's say you're iterating over the first record. Now how do I access that? How do you access that first record? Normally when you do a loop in JavaScript, right, what do you do? For I equal to 0, I less than, right? So then you use the I variable, correct? Or if you are doing for let account in account list, then you are using what? You are using this ACC variable. Similarly, you need a variable that is holding your current iterator value in HTML also. And for that, you have another directive called for item. All right, what this does is this tells you that for each task list, there is an item that's called a task, or I can just call it each task. And now what I can do is I can use this particular each task in my code. All right, now this each task is a variable, so it is not going to come with a merge field. That's why the error, it is going to come with a string literal. All right, now I can easily use this. Now if you want to see what does each task hold, let's see what happens. Deploy it fine. Let's go back, let's refresh. It's still showing object, nothing new, nothing fancy. All right, but if you see, the comma has gone away, meaning it is printing out the object one by one. But again, nothing that fancy that we need, right? So what can I do? Can I try to get each task name? How do I do that? By using the dot operator, right? This is the variable, sorry, this is the name of the element inside my object, and I can access it by the dot operator because this is of type object dot attribute name. Now if I were to deploy it, I will see all the task names showing to me. Okay, and if I were to put a break tag, it will show me it in 3 different lines, which would be a bit better. See, prepare video script, record tutorial, edit and upload. Now some information is flowing. And how are we doing it? By using this for each and for item iterator logic. This is called the for each iterator. Okay, what did we do? We basically said template for each record in task list, for each item print the task name, each task dot task name. This is the variable name that you give to your iterator. You can consider this as I or J, similar to your loops, correct? That way. And then whatever is the attributes inside, you can easily access them here. Make sense? Now let's improve it a bit more. All right, now instead of just putting it like this, let me create a div, more like a container of sorts. All right, so now inside this div, I'm going to put my each task dot task name. All right, and I'm going to just put a hyphen, and I'm going to say each task dot task progress. Okay, so I can see what is done, what is not done. Make sense? Now if you see, it is giving me an error. If I hover over it, you will see that it is saying missing key for element div inside of iterator. Elements within iterators must have a unique computed key. So now the thing is, whenever you are iterating over something and you are using any kind of lightning based elements or any kind of HTML elements, you have to mention the key attribute on the first level. You have to do that. Okay, the key has to be unique. So the key cannot be Himanshu basically. Okay, because then it will be same for all the records, correct? But it has to be unique. And how do you make it unique? By taking the task ID. So we'll have to ensure that this is 2 and this is 3. So you'll have this as unique for each record, correct? Because it is in indexing. You can use this as your key. And that's how you would actually do any and every kind of iterators. Okay, you're going to say each task dot task ID. Save. And now the error has gone. Make sense? Okay, so I'm just going to say deploy, and now let's see how this looks like. Right, much better. And now it is telling me my task is for today, prepare video script, this is in progress. Okay, I'm doing it right now. Record tutorial pending, edit and upload. Okay, I'll do it in the evening. Cool. And all the best, get it going. All right, fine, I'll get it going. So looks a bit better, and very easily now you have been able to pull in information from an array or more like a collection and been able to display it on the screen for the end user. Now there are no limits to actually decorating it. Can I use a table here? Yes. Can I highlight the in progress? Yes. Can I make this italics? Yes. Can I add more information here? Yes. Can I put indexing here? Yes. Can I put a bullet point here? Yes. All of that can be done on top of this. But the key idea I hope you understand is how to use the for each and for item. This is how you use iterators. All right. Cool. Great. Now this tells you how to use iterators. Coming back to our keynote, I did not show a list of cricketers, but I showed you a list of task items on the UI with their task priorities. Okay, I'll just change my keynote, save. Now let's also look at an alternate way of looping items, which is called iterators. Now here there is one small problem or one small caveat with this iterator, and it's not necessary for all of your requirements, but If I were to tell you that, what is the first thing that you're supposed to do and what is the last thing you're supposed to do? Can you highlight that information for me? Or can you identify what is the first thing that you have to do? What is the last thing you have to do? How do you handle that? Right? And that's where you can actually use another concept for iterating things, which is called iterators. All right. So iterators always need a key which acts as an index for every row. That's true for template iterators also, but for here you need it for indexing. Okay. You have to have a unique key from the record perspective. This index allows for re-rendering only data that has changed. Meaning, if in the backend something has changed, if in the background you're changing some value, this index will help HTML, the LWC HTML, to understand, okay, this row has changed, I have to update the value. So without reloading the page, you can see the latest values being reflected. All right. And the key can only be a number or a string. It cannot be an object. So you will think like, my object, like for example, each object is unique. Yeah, it has all different values. So I'll just take the entire object and use it as a key. You cannot do that. It either has to be a number or it has to be a string. Make sense? All right. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this, my task list. I'll create another card here. All right. My task list for via iterators. Okay. I'll keep everything same and I'll just tell you how things vary. Okay, now you are using the for each and for item concept here, but in case of an iterator, you will use iterator. It should be called task list. All right. And now your key should basically again identify based on the iterator. Right? So what will you have? You have this task iterator here and your key is now going to be task.taskID. Make sense? All right. And everything still stays the same. Nothing different. Everything still stays the same. And now the variable is called task. You can call it each task. You can call it task, but you can call it whatever variable you like or you prefer. Okay. I am going to just go ahead and say deploy. The only thing that changes is basically instead of the for each directive, use the iterator directive with a variable name that, iterate over my task list and each item would basically be this value. Just a bit of a syntax change. Okay, let's see if any difference comes up or anything breaks or something. Yes, so I have my task list via iterators, but it is not giving me any values right now. Why is that? Task list, task ID. Let's see. I'm just going to take a look at task. Because it is a iterator, I think I'll have to use the value attribute. Let's see. Might have missed that out. Task.value. All right. And this is going to be task.value.taskID. Because I think with iterators, you cannot access the property directly. You have to use the value attribute. All right. Let's check. And I think, did I update the key as well? The key, yes, the key is value.taskID. Okay. Let's refresh. Yeah, better. So with iterators, you have to ensure that your iterator variable is accessing the attributes by using the value attribute, because you'll have task.value and then you will actually access the element name that you have inside your iterators or your variable. All right. So task.value and then each of your element attributes that you want to access. Make sense? Cool. So you have this information now here. Now this is very much similar to what we see on the top. There's no difference, right? But the only improvement that the iterator brings is basically if you want to check whether this particular task is the first thing that I need to do or the last thing I need to do. What if I wanted you to bifurcate your code into what is my top priority and what is my least priority, right? So if I were to ask you what is your top priority, so if I were to put top priority for the day, right? How would you tell me which of these is the top priority? Right? So you can always access the first element in an iterator or the last element in an iterator and you can take it out. All right. How do you do that? You basically use a iterator concept of if template if true, or let's put LWC if. You use a template here. Right now in this template, you will say if the task iterator that I have in my hand currently is the first one, I want to do something. Okay, and similarly, if you have another variable that's called last, so you can use that as the last one. All right, so if it is the first one, it is going to go inside this if condition. If it is the last one, it is going to go inside this condition, and everything else is going to come here in the middle section. Make sense? Now let's say I want to highlight my first and my last tasks, right? So what I've done is I've bifurcated my information based on if it is the first top priority, right? This is the top priority. This is the least priority. Let's see how this shows up. Let's first of all see how this shows up. Okay. All right, deployed. Let's refresh. All right, so if you see, the top priority for the day is prepare video script in progress. The least priority in the day is edit and upload, which is pending. And this is my entire list. So what this tells you is basically you can extract the first and the last elements and you can deal with them separately if you have to. That is the capability you get from iterators, and you don't get it from the for each directive. Okay, and if you had to highlight something, you can do it here. It's just that you'll have to ensure that you have a key. Okay, let's go ahead and do a bit of a decoration. So I'll just go ahead and say P, right? I'll put a key here. Now this key would basically be my task dot value dot each task ID, right? And this should basically be within curly braces. All right, and now I think I should be able to add bold tag here, and the same thing I'll do for the last one. I'll just make it in italics. Instead of bold, I'm going to just highlight it as an italics. All right, done. Cool. Let me just check if this was my task ID. No, it is task ID. It will not be each task ID. I'll just put task ID here, or else it will kind of mess it up. Great. So now if I were to deploy it again, and let's also put a, okay, it's fine. Let's see how it looks. Right? So if you see, the top priority for the day is prepare video in progress. This is my entire list, and my least priority for the day is edit and upload pending. Okay. So now you're able to understand now, okay, if you had a list of, let's say 20,000, you actually wanted to just highlight what is my top priority and the least priority, or what is my first element and the last element. Any scenario where you need it, you can use the iterators instead of for each. That is where it would help you, because the first and the last element, if they need to be accessed independently, separately from the main code list, you can use this directive dot first dot last. Make sense? Okay, just type out what do you call it? Just type out iterators. Make sense if this was clear. Now very quick table based understanding for each versus iterators. So basic looping is available in both, right? Access index, meaning how do you use, or how do you have an index available? If you want to access it, it is only available in the iterator by using the dot index property. Okay, can you identify the first and last elements in a for each? No, you can identify it in an iterator. All right, and the syntax is simple for each because it's very straightforward, but this one is a bit verbose, as in it kind of creates segregations based on first and last, provided you need it. Okay, and if you don't need it, then you have to access the dot value operator and do everything, which adds some level of work, right? And when would you use which one? So if you have to display a plain list or any scenario where you don't have a requirement to separate any kind of data, go with the for each, which is your 95% of the times you'll use for each. And if you have to do some custom formatting or any separation between the all elements versus the first and last, in that case you have to go with iterators. All right, great. I think that's all I wanted to cover as part of this tutorial. In the next one, what we are going to do is a mini project. So just drop a comment that if you are ready for a mini project, and we'll do it together. All right, great. I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.